Okay. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the learning of the Holy Torah. Today's Parsha is Parshat Bo, shortest name for a Parsha outside of Noach, but one syllable versus two, at least in English. And actually, syllables don't change depending on language. That's how it goes. Real quick, the sort of quick summary of the Parsha. There's a lot to say. Obviously, the last three plagues occur. That's locusts, darkness, and the death of the firstborn. We'll study some of those in quite some depth. Also, the Jewish people get the first mitzvah ever. In fact, in total, there are 19 mitzvot in this week's Parsha. We made sort of a big deal about this last year, how there's hardly any mitzvot in the Torah up until now. 3 in the entire Sefer Bereshit. In fact, 3 up until now, and then all of a sudden, bam, boom, one Parsha, 19 mitzvot, go at it. And most of the mitzvot have to do with the Korban Pesach and the matzah, the maror, that sort of thing. And at the end of the Parsha, we also get the mitzvah of tefillin, but I get ahead of myself because before all that, the Jewish people also have to get rescued. There's the blood on the lintel and all that fun stuff, and then of course the Jewish people are taken out. 600,000 adult males, countless amount of their children and their wives, obviously, all leave Egypt together, along with a group of people who we're going to call the Eruv Rav, which will come back to bite us in future classes. Let's see. We're back in Sefaria, and the Parsha source sheet we have today is right here. 0203. Okay, let me share that with you because that's what we do. We share. And that's pretty much a summary of the Parsha. Obviously, there's a lot more to say. And to do that, we'll need to actually look at our source sheet. All right. Very good. Baruch Hashem. All right. So you should have gotten this in your email. If you did not, or it was unclear how to use it, let me know. You're obviously welcome to look over these materials on your own as well. I can't do justice to any one of these sources in the hour that I have, but we'll do the best we can. All right, we'll start with we have a line that is very commonly used, very well known because it's it mentions the Haggadah, the telling of the Jewish. We have a mitzvah on the night of the Pesach, the night of Passover. We have a mitzvah to, very uniquely, by the way, there's no other holiday where we have this. We have a special mitzvah to tell over the story to our children. So you got to tell Levincha b'yom hahu. There's a special mitzvah. It is rather unique. But aside from all that, I just wanted to show you. You know how I like to focus sometimes on the fact that the language is important. We read these verses and we just go through them so quickly, we don't sometimes pay attention to what it says. But if we look at these verses, the way the Mefarshim, the way the commentators did, we'll find beautiful ideas deep inside the Parsha. For example, chapter 10, verse 2. Right, it says, "Leman tesaper le'aznei bincha." I'm doing all these miracles, Hashem said. I'm splitting. I'm killing the firstborn Egyptian, the darkness, the locust. I'm going backwards here. All of the 10 plagues and all of the miracles you're going to see. All of that is for one reason and one reason only. Leman tesaper, so that you will be able to tell over ba'aznei bincha, in the ears of your son, uven bincha, and in the ears of your grandson, at asher hilalti b'Mitzrayim, what I did in Mitzrayim, the mockery of the Egyptians, as the Sepharia translators have it, et ototai, my signs, asher samti bam, that I placed on them, vidatem ki ani Hashem, so that you will know that I am Hashem. All right. Now we've read this verse and it's pretty clear. In other words, Hashem is saying, I'm doing all this so that you'll be able to say something about me to your children and your grandchildren. And it's that I am real. I'm not just an imaginary, myth. I am real. I've done things for you. You personally have benefited from the fact that God, I exist. That's what Hashem is saying here. Very clear, very simple, no problems, right? But then comes along the Chidah, and Chidah was very prolific. And the Chidah, Reb Chaim David Azulai, wrote the following comment in his book Nachal Kedumim, which he has several books on the Torah. Like I said, he was quite prolific. He wrote well over 30 books, and he was busy with other things as well, besides sitting on the court and being a teacher and traveling and finding tzedakah for poor communities. He was a very busy guy. Wonderful biography worth reading on the Chidah if you're interested. But anyway, so he writes, and he gives a couple of comments on this. But one beautiful comment is Efsher Ramez. So what he's asking, first of all, let's find out what he's asking. He's asking, why do we have several generations here? It doesn't say so that you will tell your future generations. It's very, very specific. It says, so you will tell your son and your son's son. So we have you, your son, and your son's son. That's 3 generations. Why are we fixated on that particular number? So he says, Efsher Ramez, perhaps this is a hint to a it's not even here. Perhaps this is a hint to the idea mentioned in the Talmud, specifically, if I find it real quick, which doesn't look possible, but it doesn't write the source here. Bava Metzia 85a. So there's a comment in the Gemara there that says that if a person, his son and grandson are all Torah scholars, the Torah shall never leave his offspring. And it says, Ramez l'chol shehu ubeno uven beno talmidei chachamim ein haTorah poseket mizaro. So if you are a Torah scholar, your son is a Torah scholar, and your grandson is a Torah scholar, that's pretty much a guarantee, says the Talmud, that you will forever have the Torah in your family. Now we know, as sad and as scary as it is, we know that almost every great Talmid Chacham has somebody in their family who left the derech, right? Decided to not be religious for whatever reason, whether that's contemporary nowadays, unfortunately, or for hundreds of years. We know great rabbis had family members, had sisters, brothers, grandchildren. I just learned recently that the Noda Yehuda's grandson was on the board of the first Reformed temple in Hungary, right? So this should not be shocking news to anybody. Moshe Feinstein, almost all the famous great Rebbeim that you can think of, somebody in their family goes off or went off, in the previous generations. That happens. Unfortunate, but true. But the Talmud says that there is a way to guarantee that this won't happen. And that's if you and your son and your grandson are all Torah scholars. Then your family is guaranteed to always have Torah in it. And we'll find out at the end of the parsha what that means at the end of our class today. What does it mean to really have Torah in your family? And by the way, it's not a guarantee that no one will ever fall off. It happens. But to guarantee that your family will continue, that's what you need. You need 3 generations straight of Torah scholars. But says Tosfot, v'hainu beroim zeh et zeh. So Tosfot there on that page explains that that's only true that if you and your son and your grandson are Torah scholars, there's a guarantee that your family will always have Torah in it. It's only true, obviously it wasn't always true. It would only be true if they all saw each other. In other words, they all learned together. In other words, they didn't, it's not like, oh, I can tell you stories about your grandfather and how much you learned. No, your grandson saw your father learning Torah, then it's guaranteed that Torah is going to stay, right? If all three of you are Talmidei Chachamim. So that's the hint in the Torah of this idea in the Talmud. Again, what did the Torah say? Laman tisaper ba'azne bincha, in your son's ear, and ben bincha, and in your grandson's ear. So you're a scholar. You're able to tell over this story of the Exodus. That's one level of scholarship, right? You're a scholar. Your son is learning from you. That's a scholar, and your son's son is also learning from you. That's 3 generations straight. That's a hint to what the Talmud says in Bava Metzia. Now, obviously, one of the beautiful things about this is the Talmud of Bava Metzia doesn't mention this verse. Okay, Tosfot kind of does, but that's not the point. The point is that this is the reason why this is the hint that the Torah has here. This is a good reason why the Torah says what it does about these 3 generations. Again, that's Nachal Kedumim, and you can peruse that source at your leisure. All right, we're going to skip a few verses to chapter 10, verse 26. 10:26, and what we have here is a very, very interesting argument between Moshe and Paro. Eventually, Paro's servants say, enough of this already. Let the Jewish people go. Let them go. Let them worship for these 3 days or whatever. We've lost. Whatever game we were playing, we lost. Time to let them go. All right, enough already. So Paro is a little bit reluctant, but he calls back Moshe and Aaron. He says, Moshe and Aaron, fine, I'll let you guys go, but tell me who's coming with you. Who's going to go worship? See, in the Egyptian mindset, in the Gentile mindset, the priests worship. Nobody else needs to go. You don't need to bring your family. In fact, bringing your family to shul, bringing your family to church, bringing your family is going to distract you from the meditation and the worship, right? It's adults only in most cultures, in most religions. So Moshe says, no, we're taking our kids, we're taking our wives, we're taking everybody. Our families need to worship together. That's how Jewish families remain. That's how the Torah stays in our family, is if we have, a family united in this cause, which is why later on we're going to have the mitzvah. We're not really going to talk about it too much in this class tonight, but a lot of the stress of this week's parsha, like I said, is the mitzvah of the Korban Pesach, which has to be eaten with the family. That huge worship, that wonderful, amazing, all of the symbolism, and there's books and books written about what the Korban Pesach symbolizes and what it means, and all of that was done with the family. The family had to be there, and could not be replaced, could not be substituted. Right? You picked the group who was going to eat that lamb with you, and they had to be the ones eating it, and the family was part of that. So besides that, he says, okay, fine, I'll let your families go, but leave something, leave your animals here. So Moshe says, even our animals are going to come with us. Lotish our parsa. Now we're not going to leave one hoof. We have to take everything we have for Hashem, because we don't know what we're going to need to worship Hashem until we get there. Now, there's a lot of things he could have meant. I'm going to just throw out, I've never seen this inside, but it could be a stall tactic, right? Moshe knew that he was basically calling his bluff. He knew that Paro was not going to let them go, and he was just looking for any possible excuse. So Moshe gave him an excuse. We're even taking our animals. We're not going to leave anything behind. No reason to hook us into Mitzrayim. Because that could have been what Paro was thinking. Like, if I make them leave something, kind of like collateral, right? I make them leave their animals, they have to come back. Right? They're not going to leave all their animals. They're not going to leave their possessions here. So Moshe's like, no. You have to trust us. We're going to go for 3 days. We'll come back. Sure, we will. We're going to take all of our stuff with us. That's okay, right? So that could be one way to look at this whole exchange. But another thing he's saying is that we don't really know what Hashem wants from us fully. We have to bring everything we can with us, which has deep, deep significance in terms of what you're bringing with you to shul. Now, I don't mean physically. Obviously, on Shabbat, you're not supposed to bring anything unless you have an eruv. We'll get to eruvs some other time. But the what you bring with you, in other words, what the baggage you're carrying with you when you come to shul to pray, all of that is supposed to be for the service. In other words, you have your mind is distracted. You're thinking about business. You can't concentrate. Hold on a second. You don't have to be distracted by business. Use that. Think about your business. Talk to Hashem about your business. Hashem, please help me with business. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to always be something lofty like help me fight my yetzer, which is also important. It can be something practical too. Something you're thinking about is something you want to mention to Hashem. You want to tell Hashem. You realize. You have to tell yourself. You realize that all of this is in Hashem's hands. Even your business is in Hashem's hands. You have to say all that. That's what you're bringing. So that's one way to look at it. But there's another very beautiful idea in the Chidushei Harim, the Rebbe of Ger. The first Ger Rebbe. I'm sorry, not the first. What am I saying? Sfat Emet was the first. The Chidushei Harim was raised by his grandfather, more or less, but also one of the great Ger Rebbe. As you know, or maybe you haven't noticed, but a lot. I try to bring sources from all over. We just had the Chidah, the Sephardic world. I try to bring sources from Ashkenazim, from Sephardim, from Hasidim. So as you might or may not have noticed, I don't often quote Hasidim, Hasidic sources. Usually that Torah doesn't so much. Some of it's a very beautiful Torah, and some of it doesn't connect with me so much. And so it's hard for me to teach, about talking horses and things like that. So, the Baal Shem Tov type stories, but the Gerer Torah, which is also Hasidic Torah, connects with me much more. Maybe it's because my Rosh Hashiva had a connection to the Ger Hasidim, but the Chidushei Harim, Rabbi Yitzchak Meir of Gur, so he wrote a beautiful, beautiful short comment. So let's first look at Rashi, just so we're, yikes, I hate when that happens. One moment, let's fix that. How do we fix that easily? That's how. Oh, I can do this even better. Let's do that. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so back to this. All right, so Rashi tells us, oh, that's weird. Oh, it's not weird. Not if you know what you're doing. Okay, sorry, I'm playing around here. Lo nedem an avoda. We don't know what to bring. Kama nichbad havoda. We don't know how much the avoda is going to require from us. Shema yishal yoter mimashi yesh biyadenu. Maybe Hashem is going to ask for more than we will have in our hands if we leave something behind. So that's the pashut pshat, simple explanation. Says the Chidushei Harim. Beautiful idea here. Very, very worth paying attention to. But we don't know what to bring. A person, when he does or she does a mitzvah, does not know if they have accomplished what they should have accomplished. Ad asher navo li'olam. Until we leave this world, hacheshbon, and then there's a cheshbon, there's an accounting. V'sham neda ma haita avodot shalanu kan. Then we will know how to estimate our avoda in this world. In other words, you never know what you've accomplished in this world, good or bad, on either end, because you think it's a small mitzvah, you think it's no big deal, but somebody saw that and was inspired and started a whole Jewish family because of one little thing you did. Like that famous story, I'm sure you've heard before, of the chassid who was praying at the wall, and this rich Jewish, Texan millionaire was actually, I don't even know if he was Jewish or not. Some Texas millionaire was there, and he was inspired. And he saw the davening, and he went home and he said, I want to see more Jews being as inspired as that person was. And he gave several $1 million to start a kollel in Texas. So these kinds of things happen. That yid who was davening has no idea that it's him, right? Still today, there's no like tag on him. Unless he passed and he's in the world of truth. And now he knows, somebody told him there's millions and millions of Torah, millions of hours of Torah that have been learned thanks to you davening. Thanks to you davening. That's it. You just want, maybe he was crying about something else. Maybe it wasn't even davening. Maybe he just broke up with somebody, you know? Who knows? Maybe he stubbed his toe. We don't know. But what that moment of him leaning on the wailing wall and crying and being in the right place at the right time made that little mitzvah that he was doing so much greater. We don't know, is the point. We don't know our impact. The same goes. This kind of sounds negative, but it's same goes for a good mitzvah that we did. Yeah, we dive in with all our hearts, and it turns out we were only doing it when we get to the world of truth. We find out we were only doing it because we thought somebody was watching us and we were trying to impress them. It's not the same mitzvah anymore. We didn't know that. It wasn't conscious, right? We didn't. That wasn't part of the calculation. I was davening. I was shekling. I was moving my arms and legs and whatever. It turns out you were just trying to impress somebody, right? So all of this is part of the cheshbon. Right, all of this will be calculated. All of this Hashem knows, and we'll know when the time comes. And all of this is hinted at, says the Chidushei Rim, in these words: Lo neida man na'avod. We don't know our own avoda. We don't know what we're bringing when we leave this world. We don't know what's in our luggage. Okay, so then comes. Then comes the beginning of the Exodus. This is the night before the Exodus from Egypt, and Moshe is told, tell the Jewish people to do a certain little something. Daber na be'aznei ha'am, speak please in the ears of the people. V'shalu ish me'et re'ehu, every man should ask from his neighbor. V'isha me'et re'uta, and every woman from her neighbor S. Gold and silver, silver and gold vessels, stuff, silver and gold. All right. And the famous comment that many people already probably know is in the Gemara in Brachot. The Gemara in Brachot, Daf Tet Amud Aleph tells us, 9a tells us, when Hashem tells Moshe to speak, please, in the ears of the people. Amri Devei Rabbi Yanai, the students of Rabbi Yanai asked, Ein na elalashon bakasha. The word na means please. Why is Hashem telling Moshe to say please? Like, please, people, go and get some silver and gold. Really? You don't have to ask me twice. Get some silver and gold. Please buy a lottery ticket. Yeah, you don't have to twist my arm here. All right, not a problem. I'll go do that right away. You don't have to, why please? So Amar Le, so they said, the answer is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. Moshe said to Moshe, V'vakasha mimcha, please ask them. Lech ve'amor lahem l'Yisrael, say to the Jewish people, V'vakasha mikem, sha'alim mitzrayim klei chesed v'klei zacha. So please ask them, because they should get this gold and silver from the Egyptians, because I don't have the rest of this here, because basically he promised, especially Avraham Avinu, that at the Brit Bein HaBetarim, from the covenant of the parts, Hashem promised Avraham that the Jewish people would leave the land that remember, they're going to be strangers in a strange land, and they're going to come out with riches. So if the Jewish people didn't do that now, they wouldn't come out with riches, and then Hashem would be a quote-unquote liar to Avraham. If Avraham says, hey, you freed my children, you freed the Jewish people, where's the money? Show me the money. Right? So that wouldn't be nice. So what's happening here? So the Malbim wants to know, what is going on here? What would Avraham really care that much about money? What's happening? So So we know that the Jewish people were supposed to be slaves in Egypt for 400 years. That's what Avraham was told. And we know that the Jewish people, for various reasons, we'll talk about some of those reasons at the end of the class today, for various reasons, they weren't able to stay there for that long. After 210 years, they're almost sunk into the lowest levels of Tuma, right? The 49th level, whatever that means. And so they had to be rushed out. We'll talk more about that later. But meanwhile, you have to consider that they thought that to come out with all the riches that were promised to Abraham, they had to fulfill the other part of the bargain. That's to be slaves for 400 years. And they said, we don't want that. We don't want to be here for 400 years. Please take us out. Like we don't care if you take us out with or without the gold. Just take us out. We don't want to be here. It's kind of like, says the Malbim, it's kind of like if you have a prisoner, right? You have a prisoner and you tell them, we're going to let you out of prison. We can let you out of prison right now. Or if you wait one more day, we'll give you $100 and a bus ticket. A smart prisoner at this point would say, take me out now. I don't need the $100. I don't want the bus ticket. I'll walk. I'll run. I'll join Rabbi Rosenberg if the rabbis can run marathon next week, and I'll go more than 10K. I don't care. I don't care about the money. Just get me out of here. So that's exactly what happened with the Jewish people. The Jewish people said, I don't want to be here. We don't want to be here. We see what's happening to us. We're getting lower and lower in Tuma. We can't stay here for much longer. Take us out now and forget about the gold and silver. So Hashem says to Moshe, no, they need the gold and silver to fulfill the entire part of the bargain. The 400 years is going to be converted into the 210 years. Sorry, the other way around. Those 210 years were worth 400 years. So they should go out with the gold and silver, and they will go out tonight, but they need to ask for that gold and silver so I can fulfill all parts of the promise that I made to Avram Avinu. So that's why he says, please do it, because it has to. Everything has to be done in fulfillment of the prophecy, and especially the positive things in a prophecy need to be fulfilled. He says a lot more. Obviously, the Malbim is very, very deep and beautiful comments, but that's not for now for us. But of course, like I said, it's your source now. You can do whatever you want with it. Copy it, share it, print it. It's yours. All right. Then we're going to skip to Shemot 12:13. Yud Bet, Yud Gimel. And another verse, we're going to really kind of compare two verses. You're going to see that there's sort of a problem here, because the next verse I'm going to quote is 10 verses later, talking about the exact same event with a little difference. That little difference is going to make a huge difference, as we shall see shortly from the eyes and the perspective of the Beit HaLevi, of Yosef Dov Ber Soloveitchik. So it says, Vayah Hadam Lachem. So this is the mitzvah that the Jewish people had and this is only the first night of Pesach in the entire history of mankind. Never again would we have this mitzvah, so don't try this at home. Vayah Hadam Lachem Le'ot. They're supposed to paint with blood on their lintels and on their doorways, right? Ala Batim Asher Atem Sham, and the houses that you are there. It's going to be a sign. V'ra'iti Atadam. When I see the blood, Ufasachti alechem, I will pass over you. That's pasachti. That's the word where Pesach comes from. Lo yeh bachem negev lemashchit v'akuti ba'eretz Mitzrayim. So this plague, in other words, the death of the firstborns, will not affect any of you in this land of Mitzrayim while I'm attacking it. Pretty simple, right? Talks about the same night a little bit later, but when it actually happens. That was, of course, the forewarning. Like, do this before I kill the firstborn, because this is how we're going to save you from the firstborn. And now this next verse we're going to quote 10 verses later is the actual event of how Hashem destroyed the firstborn. The Avar Hashem went lingof et Mitzrayim, to attack Mitzrayim, the Egyptians. Vara'a et hadam al hamashkof ve'al shtei hamizuzot. Hashem saw the blood that was on the lintel and on both doorways, on both what's it called, sides of the door, right? Whatever, yeah, the left and right side of the door. That's called the mezuzah. The mezuzah is not the case. It's not even the scroll. A mezuzah is literally the what's the word? Not pestle.
Door frame or no?
The lintel. Thank you. I think that's the lintel. Yeah, the part of the door frame, the left and right side of the door frame, the part that's vertical, not the part on top that's horizontal. That's the pestle, I think. All right. Anyway, whatever it is, I'm my brain's not here right now. All right. So whatever it is, that's those are the different parts of the door frame. And in other words, all three parts were covered in blood, and that's the sign that Hashem saw. Ufasach Hashem al haPesach, and Hashem. This is beautiful poetry, by the way. If you for Ashkenazim, you pronounce both these words pretty much the same. Ufasach Hashem el haPesach. Right, but for Sephardim it's Hasach Hashem al haPetach. Right, Hashem passed over the door frames. Yitain hamashkit lavo al batechem lingof, and did not let the destroyer, the destroyer, to go in and attack the homes. What do you see as a difference between these two verses? One verse warns about the event. The other verse is the actual event, but there's another huge difference. Anybody notice it? All right. I'll take that pause as you guys already know the answer, so you can skip this. No, I'm kidding. So the main difference is who's doing the work here. Who's the active party here? Right? Hashem is saying, I will be the destroyer in Eretz Mitzrayim. I am going to do it. And as we say in the Haggadah, Ani v'lo malach, Ani v'lo shliach. Hashem is doing this all by himself. Atzmi, right? Hashem himself killed the firstborn, not through any destroying angel or anything else. So then the question becomes, in verse 23, where Hashem says, I will not let, right? I will not let the destroyer come into your houses to do any destruction. Who's this destroyer? He's talking about himself. Is he the destroyer? It's strange, right? So the Beit Halevi has a beautiful, beautiful comment here. He starts by quoting, like I said, he quotes the Haggadah, like I said, "Ve'avarti ani v'lo malach, v'iketi ani v'lo shliach." Amar HaMashir. So why does it say that the destroyer is destroying? So here's where a lot of people, and very, very, I think, relevant for nowadays. It says here, Rak hamavtichim al shnei devarim. The destruction is referring to two different things. There's two different things being promised here. Echad, what's the first name? Pasachti alechem hayinu inyan ikar makot bechorot. In other words, the first thing where it says, I will not destroy the Jewish people, that's Hashem saying, you will not have a makot bechorot. Your firstborns will not die. And that's what it means, Hashem by himself. Hashem himself is killing the firstborns. Hashem himself is choosing not to kill the firstborns of the Jews. And that's what it means, I will pass over you. Hashem himself, who's killing the firstborns, is passing over the Jewish people and not going to attack the Jewish people. You're good for that. Shenit, the second thing he's promising them, the Al Yedei Hakod Bechorim Nasa Sham Magefa Gedolah. What happened when the Egyptian firstborns died? A terrible plague happened. In other words, a pandemic, a natural, normal pandemic, when a lot of people die and there's death all over, all kinds of corpses and disgusting, right, illnesses are going to occur because of all the death that's around. And that's the destroyer Hashem is talking about, that he's not going to allow to enter the Jewish people. Even that, the normal, natural death that usually would happen when a lot of people die from something else, even, in this case, is not going to attack the Jewish people. Remember, he says, Ki ein bayit asher ein sham mate. There was not a single house in Egypt that didn't have somebody die. But not always the firstborn, and not only the firstborn. So the firstborn died, and it started a pandemic that caused other people to get sick and die, and that caused other people to die even later on. That is the destroyer that Hashem is going to protect the Jewish people from. Do these things, follow these steps, follow the the CDC guidelines of Hashem, right? Do this, paint your lintels, paint your doorway in blood, and that's going to be a sign that I will not allow you to get that pandemic. You're safe from that. Mark yourself safe. Right? So that's what the Beit Yosef says. That's I think a very beautiful, very timely idea that we all should take to heart. All right. Next comment. We're gonna fast forward, not so far in the parsha, but quite into history a little bit, about 100 years from the Beit Halevi. Did I say Beit Yosef? Beit Halevi to the Emet Liakov, which is Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, about whom I will remind you, I'm planning on having a class. I believe it's next month. This is his yard site. I do plan to have a class for his yard site instead of the regularly scheduled life cycles class. Just so you know, I have quite a bit to say. There's certain people who I feel, certain people I've studied or learned about and have studied their Torah, who I feel most inspired by. I guess you could say, right? Rav Hirsch, obviously I quote him a lot. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. I could go on. I can make a whole list, but I'd like to this year to give a class on Rav Yaakov. I think there's a lot of things a lot of people don't know about him, and a lot of the things that he did, and you could even see in his even his son's behavior, some of that. His sons are still around, Baruch Hashem, and the big important leaders in the Jewish people. Anyway, let's see what he has to say here on this very important verse. It says here, finally it's time for the Jewish people to leave. V'ikra, and Hashem called Moshe Aaron Laila. He called them in the night. Sorry, it wasn't Hashem. I take that back. That was Paro. Paro calls Moshe. Sorry, very different guy. Paro calls for Moshe and Aaron. Vayikra Moshe Aaron Laila. He came to them in the middle of the night. Paro in pajamas in the middle of the night. Yeah. Vayomer, and he said to them, Kumutsu mitoch ami. Get up, get out from before my people. Why? Gam atem, gam b'nei Yisrael, you and the b'nei Yisrael, uluchu ivdu Hashem b'daberchem, and go kidaberchem, and go worship your God as you said. So far, so good. There don't seem to be any serious questions about any of this. However, there's an interesting question, an interesting point that you might have, that you might or may not have noticed. What's he telling them to do? He's telling them to leave. Why did they have to be told to leave? You know, they know that the Egyptians have all died. They're free. Their masters aren't going to stop them. No one's going to chase after them. You know, the slave patrol is out of circulation right now. No one's going to stop them. They can go. They're free to travel wherever they want. They can go to Hawaii. You know, whatever. They're good. So why aren't they leaving? Why do they have to be commanded to go? want to hear a beautiful insight, beautiful idea. And this fits in well with some of the other themes we've had tonight. Ube'emet, madua lo yatsu. Truly, why didn't they leave? V'atam shamar lo ganavim anachnu. We're not some sort of like thieves. Shenasa emtza halayla, that we're going to be scampering around, hiding in the middle of the night, leaving. That's not the way we do things. We left in the morning. It says, "Ayalachem lachush shema yachzor Paro." They could have been concerned that maybe Paro was going to change his mind. It's not. It wouldn't be the first time, right? He said leave, and then he tells them to come back. So why didn't he just go? Why did Moshe and Aaron in the middle of the night are commanded to tell them to go, and they still wouldn't do it? The Jewish people waited until morning to leave. Tzarich Lomar wants to say, Mekevan shayu muzharim shelo yatsu ad boker. They waited so they could leave until in the morning. Why? The kevan shekain roim anachnu. So this is how we see. She'afilu b'shvil nisayon shehatzalat kol Yisrael. This huge challenge, that must have weighed on them. They've been waiting hundreds of years for this opportunity to leave, and they really wanted to go, and they could have left. But what happened? Lo avru al lo taseh shalvatem lo teitzu ish mipetach beito ad boker. There was a command that they heard from Moshe, and Moshe told them not a single person should leave his house until the morning. And that is a great lesson for all of us. Here they are, they're poised to leave. This terrible nation that's done terrible damage to them for hundreds of years has finally let them go, and they can leave, they're free to go. And what do? They say, Moshe said no. That's all they needed to know, is that Moshe said no. Hashem told Moshe to tell them not to go. We're stuck. We can't go. There's a wall in front of us. There's a wall that's keeping us from going, and that wall is called the lo taseh, a negative commandment. Hashem said no. Moshe said no. That's all I need to hear. Not, how does he know? Who's this rabbi? I know better than him. Moshe said I can't go, but look, I looked around and there was nobody around, so I could go. Who's going to stop me? Hashem told them not to go through Moshe, and they trusted Moshe already. And that's the beginnings of how we can become a Jewish people. We need to have that if we want to stay a Jewish people, which fits in very nicely with what our next comment is going to be. We're going to see, I'm going to maybe perhaps what do they call it? Online when you make a comment that might offend people. What's that called? There's a word for it. Anyway, here, what is it? Here's a warning. I'm warning you that the trigger. That's it. It's a trigger warning.
Oh, that's like a psychology thing.
Okay. Well, it used to be. It isn't anymore. It's pop psychology now. It's an online thing now. All right. So this is a trigger warning. This might trigger you. This might upset some people, but it's a comment from Rav Zalman Sorotskin, and it's actually, we're going to not just see his comment, but then we're going to see somebody else talking about his comment and expanding it to our generation. Rav Zalman Sorotskin was from the last generation, wrote it in Oznaim LaTorah like this. First of all, let's look at the verse. V'yofu et habatzek asher hotziu mimitzrayim ugot matzot. They baked unleavened bread, and they called it matzah. Ki lo chametz, because it was unleavened because it did not rise. Why? Ki gorshim Mitzrayim, because they had to hurry out of Mitzrayim. Lo yachlu lahitmatmea ad teda lo asu lahem. Right? They couldn't. Once it was time for them to go, they couldn't wait for the bread to rise, and it was unbaked, and they took it, and that's how they took it and left Mitzrayim. Now, we just learned that Paro let them leave at midnight, Laila. Forget midnight, nighttime. They were commanded to stay till the morning. But then in the morning, they could wait longer if they wanted to. They said ad boker doesn't mean like it doesn't mean like 6:05 in the morning, no time for davening. Anytime in the morning, 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, whatever time. If 10 o'clock is still morning, not going to get into that. Anyway, so whatever the case may be, so go already. No, they stayed, and their bread didn't bake. So says the Gemara in Pesachim, and we know this. We heard this in the Haggadah, I'm sure. Matzah al shum shenagalu avatenu b'Mitzrayim. It's matzah. We eat that because the Jewish people were when they were redeemed from Egypt. So we eat this matzah nowadays because the bread was not fully baked when they left Mitzrayim. Says Rav Zalman Sorotzkin. The simple explanation we see from the commentators, that there's a hint to this, that if they would have waited, why didn't they wait? Right? That's kind of the question. If they would have waited, if they could have waited, and then they would have bread, and we wouldn't have to worry about matzah every year on Pesach. We could eat a nice, good French loaf or whatever, right? Okay, Egyptian loaf. Why do we eat matzah? Because they waited. Or they didn't wait. Why didn't they wait? So say the Mefarshim, Hayashokim benun share tuma. They were very close. They were a hair's breadth away from the 50th level of tuma, and they couldn't wait. And if they would have fallen into the 50th level of tuma, they would have had no way to fix it. There would have been no hope of them leaving Mitzrayim. Do you realize? They were almost gone as a Jewish people. So they couldn't wait. They had to take it as matzah and leave before it was fully baked. Because if they would have waited any longer, they would have fallen into too much tuma. Tachazi. Imagine this. Ma bein Yahadut below Torah. Hamavoseset al ha'umiyod shel lashon tarvut shemot begadim lu'umayim. Remember, the Jewish people, they remained the Jewish people, we say, because they kept three things. They kept their language, they kept their names, whatever that means. We talked about that in other classes. And they kept their clothing. So they kept a quote-unquote Jewish culture. So he says, look how great Jewish culture is. It'll let you survive in Mitzrayim. But not really. Because if it's only Jewish culture and not Torah, you will fall into the 50th level of Tuma and disappear. Right? They were at the 50th level with their culture, with their beautiful Yiddish language, whatever with the Jewish vests and their Magen Davids, whatever they thought was Jewish culture in Mitzrayim, they did it. And they thought that would be enough. And it was enough for a short time. But if they would have stayed enough time for bread to become chametz, they would have not been Jewish people anymore. Their culture would not have saved them. Jewish culture by itself, Jewish culture without Torah will not save Yahadut, will not save Judaism, which is why you see, and this is the trigger here, and this is why you see, if you look around, all the groups of Jews, all the different denominations, for lack of a better word, who don't have Torah, they fall apart, they fall away, and have to invent new ways to grab new members. You'll be more lenient with conversions. You just have to say Shema Yisrael and you're Jewish. As long as you paid shul membership, you're okay. We have very important Jewish events like cleaning the beach and protesting presidential candidates. So what? Wait a minute. So what's Jewish in this, right? I can remember. I think I might have mentioned one of the things that led me on the path of religiosity was when I was 17. or thereabouts. I went to a Jewish event from my public school, high school, right? Patrick Henry. I went to a nice Jewish event, and it was a Jewish club. Had I was having a dance. I said, okay, listen, I'll go. I'll see if I have any fun. And when the lights came on at the end of the dance, I didn't know where I was. Another friend drove me. There was a disco ball and everything. There was loud music. When the lights came on, the music was over. I looked around, and where was I? I was in the sanctuary of a Reformed temple. I was right in the middle of a sanctuary. And I thought to myself, what's Jewish about this? I came because I wanted to go to a Jewish event, ostensibly. If I wanted to go to a dance, I would have gone to a high school dance. I wanted a Jewish event. There's nothing Jewish about it except where it is. And this doesn't seem appropriate based on what I just saw during the disco dancing and what I see now, this being a sanctuary. This doesn't seem, I didn't know the word then. It didn't seem to stim. It didn't seem to fit. Right. So the Jewish culture in and of itself is not going to save Judaism. You need Torah. So says Rav Zalman Sorotskin in Oznaim LaTorah. Fast forward to a contemporary gadol. Is already Baruch Hashem, he should live and be well. He's already aging. Rav Moshe Sternbach writes in Tam V'dat. He quotes this Zalman Sorotskin, as we see. Hagon Rav Zalman Sorotskin Zechet Tzedek Livracha. He's already, I guess, passed away by the time Tam V'dat was written. He writes Kan Bo Re'eh Ma Bein Yahudut Shalom Lumidei Torah Yahudut. So the difference between Judaism of people who learn Torah and the Judaism Shemitaset Al Simane Le'om Shel Lashon Shemot Umalvushim Le'umayim. So there's huge difference between the Jews who have Torah and Jews for whom Judaism is just a name, a language, and certain parts of your dress, right? Certain kinds of clothing that make you feel like you're dressing Jewish. Some people wear a yarmulke, right? And that's the extent of their Judaism. Some people wear a Magen David. That's the extent of their Judaism. But that's how they show that they're Jewish, right? So that's what the criticism here is. No, I was going to skip down a little bit. He says here, towards the middle and the second to last word here, Va'anu, V'toratenu, Hakadosha, Mitkaimim Bein Hagoyim Karuv L'Alpaim Shana. Now we, with our Torah, now he's talking to the Torah world. We, with our Torah, we've now been amongst the Gentiles for 2,000 years. Now, we've not had a Jewish country with a Jewish culture for 2,000 years. V'lo misbolelet, and we have not mixed in. We've remained. How? Ki haTorah magina umatzila. The Torah, Hashem's holy Torah, has helped us and has saved us. B'dvarav nitkavin lizmanim l'shomrim simane am Yisrael. This is what shows the world what the Jewish people are. And then what we have is, now we have a problem though. Aval hayom, nowadays, midbayishim hayehudit, Yahudut, people are embarrassed by their Judaism, right? And even in the non-religious people without Torah, they don't have the clothes anymore. And they don't have the language anymore. And they don't have their names anymore. So now what's going to save them? That barely saved them. And now they don't even have that. Ubezeh, he says, sakanat. This is a sakana. We had bolalut gedola harifa ma'od. This is a very, very dangerous thing. And this is something that is not going to be able to, we're not going to be able to withstand. The challenge in the Jewish world, and especially the Jewish world without Torah, is that there's very, very little to hook us in and keep us Jewish. It's only Torah that really was helped anyway for these 2,000 years. But we see that for even in 200 years in Egypt, we were about to lose it all because we didn't have Torah. But now we've been able to survive through 2,000 years with Torah, but now we have Jews who've so fallen away that they don't have Jewish language or anything. All they have is the word Jewish and a few holidays that they celebrate here and there, and that's it. My mother's mother's Jewish, so I think of myself as somewhat Jewish. What does that mean? I think of myself as somewhat Jewish. You dance the hora at a wedding. That's your Judaism. All right. Yeah. Avinu Shalom Aleichem. So there's there has to be some sort of substance to Judaism. There has to be meaningful, potent, powerful Judaism. So this fits in with everything we've learned tonight about the Parsha. That's what really the whole theme of the Parsha is. How did the Jewish people survive Mitzrayim? They survived it because they learned Torah. How are we going to survive what we're going through? The same thing. We need to realize that we have the Torah, and if we continue the Torah with our sons, our grandsons, 3 generations, make that 3-ply cord super strong, that's the only way we'll be able to survive through all of the galut and see Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mheira v'yamin. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.